everyone, I am going to be teaching you how to do a hand-done buttonhole today. This is the technique that I sort of taught myself how to do, so take it with a grain of salt. And I'm using this fabric, it's like the Skip and Dent Batiste. I'm hoping that it shows up better as far as the grain goes, because that's really important to try to get things exactly in line when you're doing hand-done buttonholes to make them look nice, and I'll get into that in a second. And I apologize that you can see the camera, but I just want to make sure that I'm getting the shots in the frame. It's a low budget production, what can I say? So to begin, you're going to put your button down on your fabric, wherever you'd like your buttonhole to go. And then you're going to just put a little tick mark on either side of that, and that's with a water-soluble marker. Then what I do is I come back with a straight edge, and I will basically just connect the dots. And then you'll have some flavor of this. And then I will just cut along the edge. And you want to try not to touch it too much, because you don't want it to fray before you have a chance to enclose it with the buttonhole. Alright, and so I'm using contrasting thread. You can use contrasting thread if you wanted to. I'm only doing it because of the demonstration so y'all can see it better, but normally I would use white, but I mean, you can use whatever color you want. And I've pulled out 2 rungs of this. So, usually what I do is I'll take 2 sections of floss and pull out those 2. Sometimes I'll use 3 if it's like a bigger buttonhole, maybe for like a crotch area or something. But if it's for the back of a garment, I'll generally just use 2 strands of floss. And then I'll knot it a few times. Then I'll take the floss and I will separate each strand from each other, like so. So if I've got 3 strands, I would separate all 3. And then I'll hold on to that knot and bring them back so they're smooth and flat together. And my favorite needles to use for really anything except self-embroidery are sharp needles. And so I'm going to be using a sharp for this as well. Alright, and so to begin, what I'll do, I'll go just to one side. Doesn't really matter which one you pick, but I'll go just to one side, maybe 1/8 of an inch away from the slit. And then I'll go all the way down parallel. And then I'll do the same thing to the other side. Usually I have this much closer to my face, but I'm trying to keep it in frame for the camera. So usually I can see the threads better. I can see each individual thread. So, bear with me. So now I'll take this and I'll put this up through the slit. And make sure you give it a little bit of a tug, so you make sure that you've pulled it all the way, all that floss out of the back side. And then I'll turn it on the side like so. Then you're gonna hold this thread out of the way with your thumb while you put your first stitch in just past that line of thread. And then that'll be your first stitch. So again, you're going to put your needle down, and put your needle underneath the fabric. Then you're going to take your thread and put it behind that needle and behind the front of the needle. So you're going to have it looped around like this. And then you're going to pull your needle out and pull this thread towards the slit, because there's going to be a little pearl, if you will. That's basically the difference between the blanket stitch and this stitch right here, is that there's going to be a pearl at the end, which is going to be really pretty. And you want that pearl to be towards the slit of the button, towards the opening of the buttonhole. And you're just going to continue this. making sure to pull tight. And like I was saying earlier about the threads, you really want to do your best job. You want to try to make sure that that needle is going between the same two threads all along as you work up that buttonhole. I hope that makes sense. So you're trying to make sure that those edges are in line of each other. And you're just gonna keep going. I'm actually gonna move it so I can see it better. I think that hand done buttonholes aren't for every application by any means, because they do take a bit more time than machine ones. However, machine buttonholes aren't for every application, because hand button ones do look a lot better and you can get them much more precise. And sometimes machine buttonholes, like on the back of a bishop dress with all that bulk, you won't be able to get a machine buttonhole, at least in my experience. You won't be able to make it look nice. And I know I've talked to a bunch of other people who make smock bishops, and they had the same issue with the back of that bishop, that it's just too bulky, and so your machine just goes off to the side with it. And so if you've got your time invested into something like a smock bishop, you know, a hand done buttonhole isn't anything compared to all that time that you've taken to smock it. These take me about 5 to 10 minutes, depending on when was the last time I did a buttonhole by hand to complete, so that's not too terrible. Alright, so when you get to the end of that row, what you're going to do is take your needle and put it through the slat to the back and tug, so you make sure you don't let your floss out. And then take your needle up at that last stitch and bring your needle over to connect it to that next thread line. I'm glad I have a visual to this because I really don't know what these mean across. And so basically you're going to be making your bar tack this way. And you can do it once if you want, just have a thin bar tack. If you want it a little bit thicker, you can repeat. That'll be the bar tack. So now you're going to put your needle up through this slat, give it a little tug, and you're going to turn and work this direction so you can work this way on the buttonhole, doing the same process as before. Putting that needle through, wrapping around, and then tugging this tightly. And another thing when you're doing these hand done buttonholes is you want to make sure to space the stitches correctly. So you don't want to bunch the stitches up one on top of each other, but then you don't want them to be spaced out too much. Like if you bunch them too closely together, that little purl area, since it's actually wider than the stitch area, it'll start to bubble up. So the opening of your buttonhole will kind of poof out. And then if you space them too far apart, well then you're going to get to see the fabric, and you won't have your fabric enclosed as well, or you won't have your fabric enclosed as it should be, and then it'll start to fray. So it's a fine line. It's a fine line. It's a balance where that stitch should go. I kind of will do it 1 thread to 2 threads apart from each other, but that of course will vary on what fabric you're using. So if you're new to hand done buttonholes, just practice on a scrap of fabric that you're going to be doing the buttonhole on, to kind of get a sense of where to put, how far apart to space these stitches. That would be the best advice I can give you. Alright, and then when you get to the end, again, just put your needle through the buttonhole to the other side. Make sure to give it a little bit of a tug so you don't have any excess thread on the top. And then you're just going to put your needle, again, just up where that last stitch is on the outside. And then I'll untwist my thread if it needs to be untwisted. It might, have been twisted from all your work. So just untwist it if it needs to be untwisted so the bar tack will lay flat. So to tie her off, what I'll do is I'll go to the back and I'll actually go through the floss for those bar tacks. Now if you're against knots, you can just go through them a couple times and then tie her off. If you're someone like me that doesn't really mind knots because you want to be able to wash it and not worry about that, I'll do a loop and then go through the loop twice and pull it tight. And then, now there are a couple mistakes on this buttonhole because I'm trying to do this, but I did want to point out these mistakes to you. Alright, so on this side of the buttonhole, it's quite good, if I might say so myself. This lens isn't good enough to show you that closely, but it is between the same two threads. So you know, you've got your vertical threads in their fabric, and this side of the buttonhole is between the same two threads all along, and that's the goal. Over here, I didn't achieve that because I was trying to do it through the camera. So you can see that spot right there. See how that guy sticks out some? That's because he is moved over from where the other ones are. So you want to try to avoid things like that. The other mistake in this buttonhole is you see how this side is really pretty because all the pearls are tight and they're facing the same direction and all that. Well, on this side, they're not pulled tight. So you see it's a bit of a mess because I was trying to do it through the camera. You can see on this half, they're pulled tight and they look good, but on this bottom section, they look terrible because I didn't pull them tight because I didn't see them all the way through the camera. So, you want to make sure when you're doing yours that you just pull them tight so they're pretty pearls like this. Otherwise, that's a hand-done buttonhole in a nutshell, and I hope this was helpful for you and it was clear. If you have any questions, put them in the comments below and I will do my best to answer them. As always, we thank y'all for watching and we will catch y'all next time.